Okay. All right. Good evening and welcome to the Municipality of Anchorage Zoning Board of Examiners and Appeals meeting for September 9th, 2021. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Ellen McKay.
Here.
Tanya Hickok.
Here.
Dave Hale.
Here.
Monica Emerton. Dale Smythe.
Here.
Jackie Savina. Here. Skylar Quinn.
Here.
Andrew Romerdahl.
Here.
Jonathan Lang is excused. You have a quorum, Chair. Thank you.
Next item of business are the minutes. There are minutes for August 12th, 2021. May I have a positive motion, please? Need to be somewhere else. Positive motion from Monica Emerton, seconded by Dave Hale. Are there any adjustments that need to be made to the minutes? Everybody okay with how they were written? If so, is there any objection to minutes? Seeing none, the minutes are approved, and we'll go on to special order of business, disclosures. Are there any disclosures for this evening?
Yes, Madam Chair. I'd like to recuse myself from voting on the consent agenda as I was not at that meeting.
Anyone else?
Madam Chair, I'd also like to request to recuse myself from the consent agenda as I was not present at the last meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Romerdahl. Anybody else?
I would also like to recuse myself. I was not here at the last meeting either.
Thank you, Mr. Hale. And I was not at the last meeting either. Okay. All right, then, moving on to the consent agenda, we are going to have to pull item B. It needs to be postponed to the October 14th meeting.
Ms. McKay, I had a disclosure.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
I didn't.
In the case
See.
of 2021-010, Tony Hoffman is the applicant's representative at the Boutte Company, which I also work at. However, I've never seen this case before. I have no substantial financial interest or substantial private interest in the matter, so I will leave it with the board.
Can I have a positive motion?
Move to Director Hickok to
Participate?
participate, to not abstain. Yeah.
I'll second that.
Do we vote, or is it to ask for objection? Is there any objection to having Ms. Hickok participate in the case? Seeing none, you are directed to participate. Okay. Yes. I don't remember. Any other disclosures? Okay. Back to the consent agenda. We're going to have to pull item B and postpone it to October 14th meeting because there's not a quorum this evening to act on it. There isn't even a quorum to postpone it, so it is postponed. And then we're left with the rest of the consent agenda for those who can vote. Can I have a positive motion for approval of the consent agenda, please? Ms. Emerton. Seconded by Mr. Quinn. Anyone want to pull the remaining item off the agenda for discussion? No? All right, any objection to the consent agenda? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved, and we'll move on. No appearance requests, no unfinished business, nothing on the regular agenda. So that moves us to public hearings. And for the convenience of staff, I would like to have a positive motion to reorder the agenda and move item H4 up to just after H1. That way. Anyway. So, Ms. Emerton moves and Mr. Smythe seconds. Any objection to reordering the agenda? Seeing none, I will move on. So all four cases before us this evening are variance cases, and the procedure for variance cases is governed by Title 21 Regulation 2112-520, and it says that the chair will introduce the variance and explain the procedure to be followed. So this is it. The board will hear and rule on any objections of the sufficiency of notice. Then the board will hear a brief presentation outlining the variance from staff, and on the conclusion of the staff presentation, the board members and the applicant then may direct questions to the staff through the chair. Next, the applicant will give his or her presentation, and throughout the proceedings, the burden of proof rests upon the applicant, who must convince the board by a preponderance of evidence that the variance should be granted. The applicant, including all of his or her representatives, have 10 minutes for the presentation and may reserve time for rebuttal at the end of the public hearing. And on the conclusion of the applicant's presentation, the board members and the staff may then direct questions to the applicant through the chair. The hearing will then be open for public testimony. Representatives of groups have 5 minutes, individuals have 3 minutes. Time is kept by the secretary. The display in the front will be green to within 1 minute of the time allowed and then turn yellow. At this time, you should begin to sum up your testimony. At the end of the allowed time, the light will turn red and a tone will sound. All persons who testify may be questioned by the board, staff, or the applicant. At the conclusion of the public testimony, the staff, followed by the applicant, have the right of rebuttal. Then the board shall proceed to develop oral findings and conclusions with regard to the variance and disposition of the variance, and the staff will reduce the oral findings and conclusions to writing for subsequent adoption by the board at a later meeting. A concurring vote of the fully constituted membership of the board, minus those excused for conflicts of interest, shall be required to grant a variance. For a variance to be granted, all 8 standards must be substantially met. The parties then have 30 days from the date of mailing or other distribution of the decision to file an appeal with Superior Court. So with that, we'll start with case 2021-0089. Ivan Lima Jr. is the petitioner who is on the phone. So, will the staff please describe the notice given in the case?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On July 21st, 2021, a total of 79 public hearing notices were mailed in accordance with the procedures of Anchorage Municipal Code, Title 21, Chapter 3, subsection 020H notice. The site was also posted by the applicant, who has provided a signed affidavit of posting. A legal advertisement for the case was also published on the municipal website, and the Community Council was notified as well. So, thank you.
Are there any objections to the sufficiency of notice in this case? Seeing none, will the staff please present the case?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This is a request for a variance from Anchorage Municipal Code, Title 21, Chapter 10, subsection 060, Table 21.10-6, Table of Dimensional Standards, Chugiak Eagle River Residential Districts, to allow a single-family home to encroach 40 feet into a required 50-foot rear setback within the CER6 district. The proposed single-family home will be located on the south end of an approximately 3.17-acre parcel to avoid an area of high avalanche and erosion hazard. The Planning Department has evaluated and reviewed the application and presents the following findings for the board's consideration. For finding A, we do believe the standard is met. There are physical circumstances in the form of avalanche danger, slope, and unique geometry which affect this lot. There are two classifications of avalanche hazard on property. While the entire lot is encumbered by moderate avalanche hazard, which is Zone 3, the main avalanche chute, classified as high hazard Zone 2, runs directly through the middle of the parcel. This is shown in Attachment 1. The total area of Zone 2 avalanche hazard measures 43,300 square feet. The total size of the subject parcel is 138,301 square feet. Due to the size and location of the Zone 2 hazard, it renders development on the north side of the subject property infeasible due to the high safety risk posed to any residents traversing the path of the avalanche chute during the winter months. To mitigate this risk, the applicant has chosen to locate their home on the southern end of the lot outside of the avalanche chute. This lot is also subject to unstable erosion due to gravel extraction activity in the past. Aerial imagery on the parcel shows this activity going back to at least 2002. The extraction of fill materials from this site has made it infeasible to place a structure within the extraction area due to the instability of the slope itself. Substantial efforts to regrade and revegetate the slope would need to be completed before a safe structure could be placed upon it. Although financial hardship should not be factored into the decision for a dimensional variance, it is important to note that the cost to stabilize the eroded area would likely meet or exceed the cost of the proposed single-family home. Additionally, the lot narrows significantly from north to south due to the nearly triangular shape of the lot. Thus, it makes it difficult to place a home outside of the setbacks on the southern end. The width of the parcel on the southernmost edge of the avalanche chute is approximately 145 feet. This is substantially less width to develop within an area when comparing the dimensions of other parcels within the same CER6, which is a 1 acre minimum zoning district. For Standard B, we do believe this standard is met. As demonstrated in Standard A, there are physical circumstances of the subject property which impede the safe development of the parcel. These physical circumstances are avalanche hazard, slope, and unique geometry. And because of these circumstances, strict application of code would create an undue hardship on the owner and could result in an unnecessary risk to their health and safety. The applicant has chosen to place the proposed single-family home in this location to best mitigate the health and safety risk posed by the mapped avalanche chute and unstable slopes which run through the center of the parcel. For Standard C, we do believe the standard is met. This hardship is not self-imposed, and the actions taken by the applicant to locate their proposed home within the rear setback is due to both the nearly triangular shape of the subject parcel as well as the health and safety concerns posed by known avalanche danger. Because of this, most of the subject parcel is unsafe for the placement of residential dwellings. Locating the proposed single-family home within the proposed location will reduce the avalanche risk and will allow for the parcel to be used in a manner consistent with the underlying zoning and the classification within the comprehensive plan. For Standard D, we do believe the standard is met. Given the character, history, and current zoning of the neighborhood, it does not appear at this time that the granting of this variance to encroach within the rear setback will adversely affect the use of adjacent properties. The proposed single-family home does not extend beyond the property line and will not encumber adjoining property owners, nor will it encroach into any other required setback. Neighboring property owners will retain the ability to make full lawful use of their land and property. For Standard E, we do believe this standard is met. The requested variance will not change the character of the CER6 zoning district in which the subject parcel is located. The CER6 district is intended for those land areas where large lot development is desirable. The CER6 district is designed to encourage low-density residential development with gross densities of up to 1 dwelling unit per acre, while at the same time protecting and enhancing those physical and environmental features which add to the desirability of rural residential living. Availability of infrastructure and municipal services may vary, and granting this variance to encroach within the rear setback will not permit either a principal or an accessory use other than what is already permitted under Anchorage Municipal Code. And the property will be developed in a manner that's consistent with the intent and purpose of the CER6 district. For Standard F, we do believe this standard is met. While the risk of avalanche danger within the parcel will always be present, the applicant has chosen to locate the proposed home outside of the known avalanche chute and terminus. Because of this, the risk to their health, safety, and welfare is greatly reduced. The proposed encroachment will not impact public rights-of-way, utilities, stormwater drainage, and/or pedestrian facilities. And Standard G is met. Standard G just simply is not applicable to this variance request, as single-family homes are not subject to the provisions of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And for Standard H, we do believe this standard is met. This variance request is the minimum variance necessary to make reasonable use of the land for its intended use. Allowing for the placement of the single-family home in this location will reduce the health and safety risk to its occupants from avalanches and existing land erosion problems. The risk of avalanches within the subject parcel has been documented through avalanche hazard studies and observations. Due to the nearly triangular shape of the lot and steep topography, it is exceedingly difficult to place a dwelling on this lot within a conforming location. The proposed location appears to offer a reasonable solution to both minimize encroachments and health and safety risks. And taking that analysis into account, we do believe all 8 standards are substantially met, and we do recommend approval of the variance subject to conditions 1 and 2 as shown on page 6 of the staff report, and I'd be happy to take any questions the board may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff by the board? Seeing none. Are there any questions of staff by the applicant? Mr. Lima?
No, I have no questions.
Thank you. Will the applicant please state your name for the record and present your case?
Okay, this is Ivan Lima. So, should I, this is the time for me to do a brief presentation. I'm sorry. To talk about my case. So basically, I'd like to thank Brian Yale for the report, and I'd also like to thank Carly Geddig, Sean Odell, also for helping me during the preparation of the report. And I'd like to thank the Zoning Board of Examiners and Appeals for considering my case. So the reason for the case, I'm sharing a slide here on the screen. So this is essentially the location of the lot on Highland Road. So if you can see can you see my screen, this screen? The image?
We're working on it.
Okay. So essentially the lot suffers from 2 major constraints. One of them is the avalanche hazard, the danger zone, and there's an erosion that's caused by excavation over 4 years
Mr.
ago
Lima?
in the lot. And that left only the south portion of the lot.
Mr. Lima?
Construction as included in the...
Are you sharing your screen?
Oh, oops. Let me share. Just a moment. Sorry for that. Okay.
There.
Yes, I'm sharing
Now we can see it.
Sorry, I apologize for that.
Go ahead.
Okay, so it's the location of the lot on Highland Road. And most of the lots on Highland Road, because it's an alpine region, are on the CE R10 zone, which is the alpine slope district, which is suitable for this neighborhood because of the slope on both sides of the South Fork Eagle River Valley. And the lot is this sort of triangle-shaped lot here, and it suffers from 2 main problems. One of them is the avalanche zone, danger zone. And on the north portion, there is a significant erosion was caused by an early excavation. And that left only the south portion of the lot available for construction. And if you follow the straight application of the code, which is 50 feet of rear setback for the zone R6 where this lot is located, that means that the lot will have to be on the sort of on this side of the property. However, you still have to follow the 25 feet front setback. That doesn't give much to build, and you can see a house here from the neighbor. And you can imagine how the challenge would be to put anything right on that edge of the lot. And this house would not fit there. So if the house had been zoned in the zone R10, as most of the other properties in this neighborhood which had a rear setback on the code of 10 feet, I would have no problem. My wife and I would have no problem building a house there. However, because the zone is an R6 zone, has a 50-foot rear setback, that was the main challenge. And because of the presence of characteristics of, the restrictions common to alpine slope districts, such as the avalanche zone, primarily, and also the variations in the slope, and that's the reason I think for the more relaxed rear setback and the CR10, which I hope this lot had been zoned, but I think that was during the development phase. So that was left us unable to build a house in the lot unless the zoning board of examiners and appeals approves the application for the initial variance. And I concur with the findings of the staff report prepared by Brian Yale and the planning department. I'd like to thank the committee for considering this application. Thank you.
You're welcome. You have 5 minutes and 50 seconds left for rebuttal. Are there any questions of the applicant by the board members? Seeing none, are there any questions of the applicant by the staff?
No, Madam Chair.
In that case, we'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public wishing to testify in case 2021-0089? Anyone from the public? Did we have anybody calling in? Okay.
No, Madam Chair, there is not.
Okay, seeing none. Then we don't have anyone to question. So no public testimony. And then the staff, does staff have any rebuttal?
Madam Chair, I do not.
And the applicant, do you have anything further that you would like to say? Any rebuttal? Mr. Lima? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed and the matter rests with the board. May I have a positive motion, please? And for your convenience. Okay, Mr. Quinn.
I move in case 2021-0089 to approve a variance from AMC 21-10-060, Table 21-10-6, Table of Dimensional Standards, Chuyak Eagle River Residential District to allow a single-family home to encroach 40 feet into a required 50-foot rear setback, subject to the conditions on page 6 of the staff packet.
Thank you. And seconded by Mr. Smythe. Mr. Quinn, will you please speak to your motion?
I agree with the with staff's findings for all of the standards being met, specifically finding A. There's a plethora of issues plaguing this lot, from the geometry to the avalanche concerns, unstable soil, all of which, erosion concerns, all of which justify the variance here.
Mr. Smythe, do you have anything to add?
Completely agree, and I think if there were ever an example of what ZEBA is supposed to do, this is it. This is a classic case of approving it. Good luck developing this lot.
Does anyone else? Seeing none, we'll vote. Okay, that's 8 yes votes and no votes, so the variance is passed. And now I'll move on to case 4. So the staff doesn't have to hang around. All right, case 4 is case number 2021-0101. Aaron Bartol is the petitioner. Is the petitioner here? Yes, he indicates that he is. So will the staff please describe the notice given in the case?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. On August 16th, 2021, a total of 76 public hearing notices were mailed in accordance with the procedures of Anchorage Municipal Code, Title 21, Chapter 3, subsection 020H notice. The site was also posted by the applicant, and a signed affidavit of posting was submitted to the Planning Department and is included in the packet for the board's review. A legal advertisement for the case was also published on the municipal website, and a notice of the public hearing was sent to the applicable community council. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the sufficiency of notice in this case? Seeing none, will staff please present the case?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This is a request for a variance from Anchorage Municipal Code, Title 21, Chapter 10, subsection 060, Table 21.10-6, Table of Dimensional Standards, Chugach Eagle River Residential Districts, to allow a single-family home and attached aircraft hangar to encroach 35 feet into a required 50-foot rear setback within the CER 6 district. The proposed single-family home will be located on the north end of an approximately 1.04-acre parcel, and the hangar will be built within the hillside to allow for safe plane access to the airstrip. Locating the home and attached aircraft hangar in this location will allow the applicant the ability to store and service their aircraft indoors on their own property. The Pelinor Subdivision is an aviation community developed to accommodate aircraft owners and provide a safe, maintained airstrip, which is known as Highland Airstrip, for their use. The proposed hangar will be built within the hillside on the north end of the subject parcel. The hangar is being proposed in this manner due to the extreme slope on the north end of the lot where it abuts the airstrip. Building the hangar within the hillside will significantly reduce the slope difference between the hangar and airstrip, allowing for safe ingress and egress to the airstrip from the subject parcel. Due to the lot configuration of Pelinor Subdivision, there is no other reasonable or safe access point for aircraft originating from the subject parcel to access the airstrip. Dedicated right-of-way for Bernard Drive does connect to Highland Airstrip, which is shown in attachment 5. However, the use of right-of-way as a principal means of access for aircraft is discouraged and causes a safety concern for vehicles and pedestrians. The Planning Department has reviewed the application and presents the following findings for the board's consideration this evening. For Standard A, we do believe the standard is met. There are physical circumstances in the form of slope which affect the development of the subject parcel for its intended use. The subject property is a conforming CER 6 lot which was originally subdivided in 1972 and more recently subdivided in 2019. There is an FAA registered airstrip known as Highland Airstrip within the subdivision and is intended to be an aviation-oriented community. During the development of the subdivision in the 1970s, large amounts of dirt were relocated to the northern boundaries of land now legally described as lots 1 through 6 Pelinor Subdivision. This action inadvertently created an impediment for aircraft access from the subject parcel to the abutting airstrip. To solve this issue, the applicant is proposing to locate their home and attached aircraft hangar within the rear setback to significantly reduce the elevation difference between the hangar and airstrip. The existing grades on the northern property boundary exceed 50%, which cannot safely be used by taxiing aircraft. By building the hangar into the hillside, the slope difference between the hangar and airstrip will be within 2 to 5%, which allows for safe passage of taxiing aircraft. For Standard B, we do believe the standard is met. As demonstrated in Standard A, there are physical circumstances of the subject property which impede the safe development of this parcel for its intended use within this aviation-oriented subdivision. The physical circumstance affecting this parcel is slope. Because of this circumstance, strict application of code would create an undue hardship on the owner and could result in an unnecessary risk to their health and safety, and/or would render the safe access to the abutting airstrip impossible. The applicant has chosen to place the proposed single-family home and attached aircraft hangar within this location to best mitigate the health and safety risk posed by the extreme slope to allow for safe passage to and from the abutting airstrip. For standard C, we do believe this standard is met. The hardship is not self-imposed. During the development of the Highland Airstrip in the 1970s, large amounts of earth were removed and pushed to the outer edges of the airstrip to provide a safe, level surface to accommodate the takeoff, landing, and taxiing of aircraft. This action created a safe airstrip, but also resulted in steep slopes of more than 50%, which are greater than 16 feet tall, along the northern boundaries of several of the abutting residential lots. Because of this, there is no safe means of aircraft egress and ingress from the subject parcel to the abutting airstrip. Locating the proposed single-family home and attached aircraft hangar within this location will greatly reduce the elevation difference between the hangar and airstrip and will allow for the parcel to be safely used in a manner consistent with its underlying zoning, subdivision, and classification within the comprehensive plan. For standard D, we do believe this standard is met. Given the character, history, and current zoning of the neighborhood, it does not appear at this time that the granting of this variance to encroach within the rear setback will adversely affect the use of adjacent properties. The single-family home and attached aircraft hangar does not extend beyond the property line and will not encumber any adjoining property owners, nor will it encroach into any other required setback. Neighboring property owners will retain the ability to make full lawful use of their land and property. For standard E, we do believe this standard is met. The requested variance will not change the character of the CER6 zoning district in which the subject parcel is located, and the granting of this variance to encroach within the rear setback will not permit either a principal or accessory use other than what is already permitted under Anchorage Municipal Code. The property will be developed in a manner that is consistent with the intent and purpose of the CER6 district. For standard F, we do believe this standard is met. The approval of this variance will not adversely affect the health, safety, and welfare of the people of the municipality. Allowing for the single-family home and aircraft hangar to be constructed within the rear setback in the proposed manner will reduce the slope angle from the hangar to airstrip from over 50% to between 2 and 5%, allowing for safe passage of the homeowner's aircraft to and from the airstrip. This will reduce conflict between aircraft near and on the airstrip by reducing the possibility of unintended slides of aircraft onto the airstrip or loss of control during taxiing. The proposed encroachment will not impact public rights-of-way, utilities, stormwater drainage, and/or pedestrian facilities. Standard G, we do believe, is met simply because standard G is not applicable to this variance request, as single-family homes are not subject to the provisions of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And for standard H, we do believe this standard is met. This variance request is the minimum variance necessary to make reasonable use of the land for its intended use and is consistent with the intent of the subdivision as an aviation community. Allowing for the placement of a single-family home and attached aircraft hangar in this location will allow for the safe passage of aircraft between the hangar and the airstrip. And without this variance, excessive amounts of land would need to be regraded to provide a safe transition between the subject parcel and airstrip. And while financial hardship cannot and should not be used as a finding to grant a variance per Anchorage Municipal Code, it should be noted that it is unreasonable to expect that the applicant to regrade the subject parcel because the cost to do so would likely render the cost of construction for a single-family home and aircraft hangar infeasible. We do have some additional materials for the board's review this evening, one of which is a resolution of support from the South Fork Community Council and also a correction to the plot plan that was submitted, just clarifying the rear setback. It was listed as 15 feet in the plot plan that was submitted, but it is indeed 50 feet. And that is in supplemental packet number 1 under agenda item H4. And Planning Department does believe that all 8 standards are substantially met, and we do recommend approval of this variance subject to conditions 1 and 2 on page 6 of the staff packet. And we do have one advisory comment, but we would prefer that that remain advisory in nature and not be subject to a condition of approval. So with that, I would be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions of staff by the board? Seeing none, are there, that's kind of an odd thing here. come forward and state your name. And spell it for the record, please. You need to turn your mic on. The little talky face thing. There you go.
Testing?
Yep.
Aaronbartel.
Okay, do you have any questions of staff?
Nope.
Okay, then would you please present your case?
First of all, I thought Ryan did a very good job summarizing what we submitted, so I don't want to probably be too redundant and repeat everything he said, other than the fact that it is a airstrip community. It's designed for airplanes. That's the intended use of it, and we're going to try to keep it that way. Trying to build the hangar outside or within the setback as it would be is not only financially hard, it's impossible physically because the road would be in the way. Right now, from the road to the runway, it exceeds 10%, so you'd have to dig it all the way to the road, and then in fact you'd still be exceeding 10%. So it's actually physically impossible to put a hangar at the road elevation and not have to dig it in somehow. So it's physically impossible to actually construct this in a safe manner to have airplanes there. The only other option would be to leave the airplane on the airstrip, which isn't my property. So that's kind of the reason behind it. I've reached out to all of my neighbors before starting this, so every neighbor that adjoins the property has wrote a letter that's in the packet in recommendation for approval of this. We've discussed designs and stuff with them. Everyone likes the aesthetics of it for how it fits in with the neighborhood, the safety factor, and the fact that most of them are pilots and we're all part of that community. And other than repeating all of everything that Ryan already summarized, I think that pretty much captures what I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. You have 8 minutes and 22 seconds left for rebuttal. Are there any questions of the applicant by the board members?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Smythe?
Through the chair, I think you have an elegant solution here, but so I couldn't recognize from the packet, no one else has had to go through this along the runway? It's just your lot because of the way the dirt was pushed up? Is that what's going on?
Well, the other two lots that have previously built actually have a different setback requirement because there's a cul-de-sac right-of-way within their lots, so they have a different standard than I have to meet. And the only other person that has built has not to date built any kind of an aircraft hangar or anything on the airstrip yet, so he hasn't encountered anything yet, and his lot isn't sloping the same as mine.
Thank you.
Anyone else have a question for the applicant? Okay, thank you. Are there any questions by staff of the applicant?
Madam Chair, I do not.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone from the public wishing to testify in case 2021-0101? Anyone from the public wishing to testify in this case? Anyone at all? Okay, seeing none. Does the staff have any rebuttal?
Madam Chair, not so much. I just wanted to point out maybe on page 27 that kind of shows, there's some contour lines there that kind of shows this on the north end of the lot and how that extends along Highland Airstrip to the west. Just addressing Mr. Smythe's question earlier. So, thank you.
Does the applicant have anything additional? Anything else to say?
Nope, thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Okay, so we'll close the public hearing. Matter rests with the board. Can I have a positive motion, please? Mr. Hale.
In the case of 2021-0101, move to approve the variance from AMC 21.10.060, Table 21.10-6, Table of Dimensional Standards, Chugach Eagle River Residential Districts to allow a single-family home and attached aircraft hangar to encroach 35 feet into a required 50-foot rear setback, subject to Department recommendations 1 and 2 on page 6.
Did you want to include the staff's advisory comment as well, or on
To
page
the chair,
6 of
we don't
staff?
need to, right? Yeah, just 1 and 2, subject to those. The other is just an advisory comment.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Romerdahl, seconds. Would you speak to your motion, Mr. Hill?
Thank you, through the chair. I agree with staff's findings and would only say that obviously the slopes are an issue with development of this lot. It was intended to be aircraft lots. It's an aircraft community. If you can't use it as that, then it's not much point in creating the subdivision in the first place. So I would say that due to the slopes, the limitations of the lot make it so it's not usable in the way that it was meant to be. So yeah, I'm going to be supporting my motion.
Mr. Romerdahl.
Through the chair, just echoing Mr. Hale's comments and also agree with the recommendations of staff. Seems like an amicable solution and keeps with the spirit of the runway and the aviation theme of the neighborhood. So I intend to support the motion.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to comment? Ms. Hickok?
I also intend to support this motion. I'd like to put on findings that the case was recommended for approval by the Community Council, as noted in the addendum.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, then we will vote. Okay, 8 yeses, no nos, and the variance is approved. Okay. Moving on to case number 2, which is case number 2021-0096, Mike Markey. Indicates he is here. Will the staff please describe the notice given in this case?
Yes, Chair McKay. On August 16th, 2021, a total of 121 public hearing notices were mailed in accordance with the procedures of Anchorage Municipal Code, Chapter 3, Section 20, entitled 21. The Hillside Community Council was noticed, a legal advertisement was placed on the municipal website, and the applicant posted notice on the property, and a signed affidavit is included in the packet.
Are there any objections to the sufficiency of notice? Seeing none, will staff please present the case?
This is a request for a dimensional variance from a 20-foot required front setback to allow for a 12.2-foot encroachment of an existing 80-square-foot accessory storage structure. This encroachment was discovered in 2020 when the property owners sought a building permit to renovate the existing single-family home that is also on the property. On page 22, there are comments that were from both individuals and from agencies. 4 neighbors submitted comments supporting the granting of the variance. They stated the storage shed fits in with the neighborhood, is located on a landscaped pad, and does not preclude access for safety or utilities. There were no objections to the granting of this variance from agencies. In order to approve the variance, the board must find all 8 findings are met. I will briefly review these findings that are in the staff packet. For standard A, the standard is met. There's a steep grade on the property. It slopes to the northeast, and this is an exceptional physical circumstance of the property. Contour lines show the elevation changes from approximately 731 feet to 697 feet over the grade of the lot. Standard B is not met because sheds are allowed within the side and rear setback, but not within the front setback. So this lot has a 20-foot front setback. The side setback is 5 feet. The applicant could move the shed northeast on the property and be within the side setback. The need for heavy equipment to relocate the shed is not an undue hardship. Standard B is not met. The hardship is not self-imposed, is self-imposed. The existing shed or an additional shed could be placed within the east side yard setback for additional storage. For standard D, that standard is met. The granting of this variance will not adversely affect the use of adjacent properties. The shed does not impact access to adjacent properties, and neighbors that own property directly adjacent to this parcel and across the street submitted comments of support for granting the variance. Standard E is met as the requested variance will not change the character of the R10 zoning district in which the petition site is located. The variance also meets the intent of the R10 district, and neighbors provided comment supporting the variance, and the applicant stated he does not store items around the outside of the shed and he keeps it neat in appearance. For standard F, this is met. The existing storage shed does not result in any negative impacts to the health or safety of the people of the municipality of Anchorage. No off-site impacts have been identified. In their comments, traffic engineering stated that the accessory structure does not impact required parking or site distance to the existing road right-of-way. Standard G is met. The Americans with Disability Act doesn't apply to a single-family home. This variance will also not restrict or impede any access to the shed. Criteria H is not met. This is not the minimum variance that will make a possible reasonable use of the land. In code, Anchorage Municipal Code states that setbacks are to promote a reasonable relationship between residences and a consistent residential streetscape. Sheds are allowed within the 5-foot side setback, and the shed could be relocated within the east side property line. The department finds that standards A, D, E, F, and G are met, and standards B, C, and H are not met. Therefore, the department recommends denial of the variance. However, if after a public hearing, the board finds that all 8 standards are substantially met for a dimensional variance from the front setback, then approval should be subject to the following conditions. Those are on pages 5 and 6 of the staff report, conditions 1 and 2. One is that the variance approval is for an accessory storage shed encroachment of 12.2 feet into the required 20-foot front setback for a single-family home within the R10 zoning district, as shown on the as-built survey. And prior to this variance becoming effective, a notice of zoning action is filed with the State of Alaska District Recorder's Office. Also, the applicants are in the audience and available tonight to provide additional information. Thank you.
Are there any questions of staff by the board? Seeing none, will the applicant please come forward? And could you state your name and spell it for the record, please?
Hi, my name's Mike Markey, and this is my wife, Ellen Ruby Markey, and I'm going to let her do the talking since she's a much better speaker than I am.
Thank you. Do you have any questions of staff?
No, we do not.
Okay. Then would you please present your case?
Sure. Did you want us to spell the names?
No.
Mike Markey, M-A-R-K-I-E, first name Mike, Mine's Ellen, E-L-L-E-N. Last name Ruby Markey, R-U-B-Y-M-A-R-K-I-E. And I'd like to reserve a few minutes for rebuttal at the end. Probably not going to use the whole time anyway, but
Okay, we'll let you know.
okay. Great, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and to the board. I want to thank you to Carly and Elizabeth for helping us during this application process and answering lots of questions for us. This is the first time we've ever done this in the municipality. My husband and I have lived in Anchorage for 9 years. We're very happy to be here and be in Alaska. We're very proud of the municipality and the neighborhood in which we live. The Valley View Subdivision is a very nicely well-maintained area. It's been in existence since the mid-70s. I think our house was built in 1975. We just made a substantial investment in a complete renovation to the home there. So making sure it's aesthetically pleasing, maintains the community value is very important to us. We are so committed to our neighborhood that I'm on the HOA board and Mike is on the LARSA board. So being part of community is very important to us. I'd like to address several areas in the staff analysis report regarding the feasibility of relocating the outbuilding. Our lot is steeply sloped. You can see by the topo map that we have very little flat usable space. It's pretty much the front yard, that little bit of section where the shed is on, and then even the back of the house is on such a steep grade that we could do a walkout basement. On the other side, by the shed, we have a small dog run area that's basically over where the septic system starts. So we're constricted by septic location, very large trees. There's HOA rules regarding tree removal, and some of these trees are very old. We estimate at least one of the ones that would be impacted by any moving of the storage building is probably 100 years old. So those are significant. We did have to take some trees out this year for spruce bark beetle kill. We actually had to use a neighbor behind us for access to that back part of our lot because of the steeping, sloping area that we're dealing with. One of our primary concerns about moving the building is that our current septic system is on the only side of the property where the shed could be relocated. If we move the shed back, any maintenance or repairs that are needed to the septic system could be impacted. Future access to that area if the building is moved and there's grade work or any sorts of things done to do that. Heavy equipment issues we feel are more than just an inconvenience. There's limited access, again, due to the sloping grade, a very short driveway, substantial grade I mentioned before, potential damage to the driveway, the yard, parking area, and the retaining wall that's existing there. I mentioned earlier as well several large trees which would need to be removed. If we tried to use the east side setback, we understand there's a 5-foot variance there, or area that we could, if it had no trees on it, that we could move it to. But there are substantial terrain issues that we'd have to deal with to move that. Our garage is smaller than neighboring properties and many of the properties in our community because of the nature of the lot that we're on. It's a one-car garage. We looked initially at could we build onto that garage, and we can't meet the variance requirements for that. There's nowhere to put it, and then again, that would impede on the septic system. There are multiple homes in our neighborhoods with sheds and their front setbacks. There are 3 different properties within several blocks of us. Whether or not they're approved by the municipality, I cannot speak to that, but I can tell you specific street addresses if you need those. 4 neighbors, as Elizabeth has said, have written in support of this variance request. Our most immediate neighbor, most closely impacted by the location of the shed, is a certified landscape architect, and he's very pleased with the look. It's very nicely done. Wood-sided, nestled in the woods, landscaped around us. That building was installed in 2004 by the previous owner, so we had no way of knowing at the time that that did not meet borough codes at the time. I think that's all I had.
Okay, you have 2 minutes and 25 seconds left for rebuttal. You've got 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, are there any questions of the applicant by the board members? Board members have any questions? Mr. Hale?
Through the chair, you mentioned the trees. Your HOA doesn't allow you to cut some of those trees down. Is that, so that's another condition on
It
the
is, yeah.
plan
Then
itself?
you have to apply for an exception to have a tree moved in that area. Every tree in that area is called round tree, crooked tree. I mean, we're very proud of our very large, I guess, old growth for Anchorage trees. So it's a very big deal to cut a tree down there.
So it's not just the impact of moving the shed, it's where you're going to put it without impacting the land.
Exactly. And we do love our trees. That's one of the primary features of the lot that attracted us in the first place.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the applicant? Mr.
Madam
Snyder?
Chair, through the chair, along the same lines of the trees, that's what, it's hard to tell in your survey because you don't indicate the location of the trees. It looks like you move a shed 2 feet or whatever it is, but it is more complicated than that. What about access of equipment around the house? Is that even possible without cutting trees down?
So when we were remodeling the house, we had to take a couple trees out of the side lot to just get a tiny excavator down there for the electric company to get in, and they could only excavate so much, and then I had to pay some laborers to come in and hand dig a 60-foot trench up to the house due to the ability of the equipment to get up and down. They couldn't get up and down the slope with the smaller equipment. So bigger equipment, we would have to remove a bunch more trees to get into the backyard.
Thanks.
Yep.
Anyone else? Seeing none, are there any questions of the applicant by staff?
I have none, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Is there anyone in the public that wishes to testify in case 2021-0096? Anyone at all? Okay, so we don't have any questions, blah, blah, blah. So the staff, do you have anything else you want to say? Do you have any rebuttal?
Madam, do not.
Okay, and applicant, you have a lot of time. Then they indicate not. So we will close the public hearing, and the matter rests with the board. May I have a positive motion, please? Ms. Emerton.
Yes, I move to approve case 2021-0096, and it is to approve a variance from AMC 21.06.020B, Table 21.0-1, Table of Dimensional Standards, Residential District, to allow for an accessory storage building encroachment of 12.2 feet into the required 20-foot setback, front setback, subject to conditions 1 and 2 shown on pages 5 and 6 of the staff report.
Thank you. Seconded by Ms. Hickok. Ms. Emerton, will you speak to your motion, please?
Yes, I intend to support my motion, and I agree with staff's findings A, D, E, F, and G as laid out in the staff packet. I would argue that finding B is allowable due to the septic system, the slope constraints of the site, as well as the tree removal that is restricted by the HOA that would be required for moving the shed. I would also argue that B is substantially met. These were not actions that were caused by the applicant. There was a note in the packet that it looked like the shed was built in 2004, and the applicant stated they'd been here about 9 years, so the shed was built prior to them, so that we're not self-imposed. And then H, I would also argue that the septic and the slope are significant constraints for the homeowner. Thank you.
Ms. Hickok?
I also intend to support my motion for the same reasons that Ms. Emerton stated, as well as I think it's important to note on the H, the minimum variance required for the land, also the trees, maintaining those existing old growth trees in accordance with the homeowners association.
Anyone else? Anyone else wish to comment? Add anything? If not, then we'll vote. Eight yes votes, no votes, and the variance is approved.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on to case number 3. Last case of the evening. And the petitioner is Pan Arctic Capital. So they, okay, good, indicate they are here. Will the staff please, did I say? 2021-0099, applicant Adam Turner and Melissa Branch. Okay, so will the staff please describe the notice given in this case?
On August 16, 2021, a total of 293 public hearing notices were mailed in accordance with the procedures of AMC 2103-020H. As of this writing, no public comments have been received. The Spenard and Midtown Community Councils were notified, and the signed posting of affidavit can be found in attachment 4.
Are there any objections to the sufficiency of notice in this case? Seeing none, will staff please present the case?
This is a request for a variance from AMC 2106-020B to allow an existing fueling canopy to encroach approximately 1.2 feet into a required 10-foot primary front yard setback along Arctic Boulevard. The applicant was made aware of this encroachment in a non-conforming determination dated June 14, 2021. Also reported in this non-conforming determination was that the fueling station was not permitted by right and subject to a non-public hearing site plan review per AO 94-168. The non-public hearing site plan review was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission on July 19, 2021. The as-built dated February 11, 2021 indicates a 1.2-foot encroachment into the required 10-foot east primary setback. Agency comments are included in attachment 3. There were no objections to this variance request. In order to approve the variance, the following standards must be met. Standard A is not met. The subject parcel has no physical circumstances such as wetlands, streams, or unique geometry which affect this lot. However, the encroachment would have been discovered and addressed if the original owners had completed the non-public hearing site plan review. The current property owners have received approval of this site plan review required per AO 94-168. The canopy replacement was approved under building permit 97-5820 in the existing location. Standard B is not met. There are no physical circumstances present on the subject parcel, therefore strict application of this code would not prohibit the structure to exist on the lot in a conforming location. Standard C is met. The current owner purchased the property without knowledge or disclosure of this encroachment. During the due diligence process prior to purchasing this parcel, the encroachment was not disclosed nor discovered. The current property owners were incorrectly under the assumption that no encroachments existed and the existing structure met all AMC Title 21 building standards. Standard D is met. Given the character, history, and zoning district of the neighborhood, it does not appear at this time granting of this variance would adversely affect the use of adjacent properties. Standard E is met. The requested variance will not change the character of the B1A local and neighborhood business district with special limitations. Standard F is met. It does not appear that this encroachment will result in any negative impacts to the health and safety of the people of the municipality. This encroachment will not affect any public facilities, utilities, or environmentally sensitive areas. Standard G is met. The site is required to come into conformance with ADA standards, and an accessible pedestrian connection is being provided from the bus stop on the south of the property along Arctic Boulevard. These improvements are not impacted by the existing fueling canopy. Standard H is met. Since it is an existing structure, the request is the minimum variance necessary to make reasonable use of the land in the existing location. AMC 2103-240G requires that all 8 standards be substantially met in order for a variance to be granted. The department finds that standards A and B are not met, and standards C, D, E, F, G, and H are met. Therefore, the department recommends denial of the variance. However, if after a public hearing the board finds that all 8 standards are substantially met, then the approval should be subject to the following conditions found on page 5 and 6. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions of staff by the board? Mr. Smythe?
Through the chair, can you go over the permitted approval of the fuel canopy again, the time frame? It's been there since the 70s, but the canopy was rebuilt in 97, or can you review that again?
Thank you. Through the chair, yes, this fueling station has been in existence, I believe through the 70s. However, due to the zoning special limitations, it's not permitted by right, and that was, I'm not sure how it was never caught by enforcement, but through the process of the applicants doing the renovation, it was that enforcement action was discovered, and so they went through the non-public hearing site plan review, similar to a major site plan review. However, a public hearing was not opened. And then in 1997, under building permit 97-5820, they received a building permit for the demolition and reconstruction of fueling canopies, which is what approved the existing canopies.
Thanks.
Mr. Hale?
To the chair, can we just clarify real quick on A, existing, exceptional, or extraordinary physical circumstances of the property? That's land, right? Slopes, it's wetland, streams. It's strictly the land that we're looking at, right?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Thank you.
Anyone else have a question for staff? Okay, I have a question. So we're talking about the top part, right?
Yes, Madam Chair.
So it's like 20 feet in the air.
Yes, I don't have the exact dimensions, but the applicant could answer that question definitively.
Okay, thank you. Will the applicant please come forward and state your name and spell it for the record, please?
It's Melissa Branch with Big City Engineers. It's Melissa Branch, and I also have Doug Peoples with Panarctic Capital with me tonight.
And do you have any questions of staff?
No, I have no questions of staff.
Okay, then will you please present your case?
Absolutely. So Carly's covered a lot of it. When Panarctic Capital bought this property, it was a gas station since 1970, and in 1994 they realized with the zoning they had that it wasn't a legal use in the zoning, and they rezoned it with the requirement that they go through site plan review, which never happened. So then the canopies were to be replaced in 1997 after that 94 ordinance that required the site plan review. It went through a hearing. It was mentioned if you read the review comments for the permit case. They still granted the permit for it, allowed it to be approved, allowed it to be constructed, and those canopies have been in place in that configuration since. So I wanted to clarify that since Member Smythe asked that question. So I know it's physical circumstances, and I know it's supposed to be the land, and I'd argue that physical circumstances in this hardship in this case, or the existing condition, that it's a developed site. So you have a fuel canopy that is centered over fuel islands to purposely protect the fuel lanes, and it's centered and it was engineered that way to be balanced for the wind loads and everything else, and so it's not just an easy thing to go cut off an edge of it, to be able to remedy that. And then it's that snowball effect of Then you'd have to relocate the fuel islands, which is all subgrade work, and the fuel island moves and the canopy move to do that, because otherwise, to just cut that edge off, would leave that fuel lane unprotected, which is the whole point of the canopy. The other part to clarify with the canopy is it's 16 foot to the bottom of it, and it's about 2 foot deep, and it is just that piece in the air. And I'd also like to point out that it really is the minimum request that we could make for encroachment, because we actually have 2 frontages. So we looked at which should be the primary and which should be the secondary, because the primary has to have the full 10 foot. And if we were to switch yards to Tudor, it would actually worsen the encroachment. So we worked really closely with MOA planning staff to try to reduce that really to the minimum. Yep, I think that's everything I wanted to cover for you guys, is that I really feel that just in the permitting and the way the site was processed, and that it's been existing and been in use, and they kind of inherited this problem, that it is a physical circumstance, and so that A and B actually are met.
Okay. Are there any questions of the applicant by the board members? Anybody? Mr. Romerdell.
Yeah, through the chair. So I'm curious on one of the 2 conditions. The first one has to do with the letters of non-objection from the utilities. Just out of curiosity, has the applicant started that process or contacted those, or is that?
We've had preliminary conversations, but we haven't made a formal request to them for it yet.
Have those, I mean, have you come up with any red flags in those preliminary?
No, they haven't, because we actually brought it up to them, to the utilities, when we were talking about, because part of what we're doing through the site plan review is installing landscaping that wasn't previously installed and is required by code, and we're installing it in those easements. So we, have those conversations with them about that work as well.
Sure. Thank you.
Anyone else have a question? Ms. Hickok?
I have a quick question. I may have missed it. Was Pan Arctic Capital the owner throughout?
No, so they purchased the property, is it 2019? 2020, in 2020.
Oh, so it was
So it's a
inherited.
recent purchase, and so then they started the process. I mean, they'd done their due diligence, they purchased the property, and then they went and got a non-conforming determination, which we had revised. That's the June when we had revised for the yards, but.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Any questions of the applicant by the staff?
No, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone from the public wishing to testify in this case? Anyone at all? Anyone wishing to testify in case 2021-0099? It's just a stampede of people coming forward. Okay, so we go down, down, down. Does the staff have any rebuttal?
No, Madam Chair.
And does the applicant have anything further you would like to say?
I think I'd really just like to share that through the process with these, with Pan Arctic, I have never run across a case that had so many issues going on with the site and the use not being allowed. And so they have done a great deal of work, this variance being that last piece of it, to actually bring this site into full compliance with code and to, to right everything, and have done a great deal of work to actually improve the property so that it's not, it's better for the neighborhood. So, and like I said, I just argue that the physical circumstance being that it existed, it's been in existence, and that it was permitted, what we're asking for an encroachment on was a permitted use.
Okay. Then the public hearing is closed and the matter rests with the board. May I have a positive motion, please? Ms. Hickok.
I move to approve case 2021-0099 to approve a variance from AMC 2106-020B, Table 2106-2, Table of Dimensional Standards, Commercial and Industrial Districts to allow an existing fueling canopy to encroach approximately 1.2 feet into the required 10-foot primary front yard setback, subject to conditions 1 through 3, shown on pages 5 and 6 of the staff report.
Thank you, and seconded by Mr. Smythe. So, Ms. Hickok, would you please speak to your motion?
Through the chair, I intend to support my motion. I agree with the petitioner's representative in this instance and that they inherited an out-of-compliance property and have done a great deal to bring the property into compliance. So I would venture to say that the parcel or the fueling canopy in itself is a physical circumstance, existing circumstance of the parcel. And so I would agree with the findings of C, D, E, F, G, and H, but then would argue the findings in A and B specifically that physical circumstance is the fueling canopy itself. And because of this physical circumstance, it would create undue hardship to the property owner.
Thank you. Mr. Smythe?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I also intend to support the motion. I think I agree with Mrs. Hickok's findings. I also, this is not the first time we've seen, in essence, a situation arriving at ZEBA to clean up a mess from earlier. That's what I feel like we're stuck with. And I don't know, for the applicant's sake, what else you could do in this circumstance that's reasonable, with considering how long both the use and the canopy have already been there with no evidence presented that there's anything wrong with it. So I intend to support the motion.
Any other comments? Anybody have anything else to add? If not, then I will speak and say that I, too, will support the motion. I think that a 1.5-foot problem that's 16 feet in the air meets the definition of de minimis, and I will be supporting the motion. And with that, we'll vote. Eight yes votes, no votes, and so the variance is approved. You're welcome. Okay, that is the end of the public hearing portion of the agenda. And I don't have a report, and I don't think Mr. Lang has a report. Secretary?
No, Madam Chair, thank you.
No committees? Any board member comments? I think it's great that we're all here. Anyway, I will entertain a motion for adjournment. No?
Second.
Okay, got it. Mr. Hale, Ms. Hickok, we're adjourned.